Survivor, heroes versus healers versus hustlers versus fans versus favorites versus villains versus blood versus water versus brain versus brawn versus beauty versus white collar versus blue collar versus no collar versus millennial versus Gen X versus David versus Goliath. Survivor, heroes versus healers versus hustlers originally aired September 27, 2017, meaning that season is coming up on its 4-year anniversary. Time sure does fly when you're having fun, right? Talking about time flying when you're having fun, welcome back to Survivor Retrospective. If you're new to the channel, where have you been for the past 35 days as we've been counting down every single season of Survivor every single day leading up to Survivor Season 41? And we're almost there. If you want to catch up on all your Survivor history before the new season airs, I recommend watching the playlist I created that holds every single one of these Survivor retrospectives. I'll place a link down in the description with that playlist, and with all that said, let's finally get into it.
39 days, 18 people, 1 survivor.
There's a lot to unpack with this one, but before we end up dropping some bombs, get it? Bombs? Before we drop some bombs, there's a little bit of housekeeping that we need to get done. Heroes versus healers versus hustlers is an awful name for a season, and for the rest of this video, I'm just going to refer to it as Triple H or HHH. Survivor HHH introduced us to the Final 4 Fire Making Challenge in a controversial way, but also saw other pieces of the beloved Survivor format changed in little ways. For the most part, the characters of the season aren't considered by any means as home runs, but they at least get the job done with some solid base hits. Finally, just like the mandatory Day 38 Fire Making Challenge, this season is a lot like a slow burn. A very flat and slow start to the season that begins to pick up around the halfway point, with an explosive last few episodes of the game.
So 7 days into the Hero Tribe, at this point, you could say that Chrissy and I are driving the train.
Airing directly after Survivor had finished its 500th episode celebration, it began to appear Survivors began to run out of ideas on how to shake things up with new themes as we were given Survivor Triple H. I'm sorry, but just call it Brain Brawn Beauty 3 or something like that. Like, it's the same idea as Kageyan and Worlds Apart, but just in a worse and more confusing way. To make the theme sound even more like a joke, the players don't really care about it. It becomes pretty forgettable. This season does do some things right though, as it reverses the simplified tiebreaker rule that was implemented in Survivor Game Changers. If you forgot already from yesterday, the rule being if there's a tie vote, there'd be no revote made. Instead, there'd be an open forum discussion. And if a unanimous decision just can't be made, then they go right to rocks. That was complete BS as the rule was taken away right here in the premiere of the very next season. What I really like about this format change is that the players were told about it in advance and not blindsided by a decision made by production when it would randomly pop up. Does that sound familiar to anyone else? Randomly popping up production decisions?
Congratulations, you have won an advantage in the form of information. Tonight, you will choose one person to sit next to you at the final tribal council, forcing the 2 remaining players to earn their way to the end by battling it out in a fire-making challenge.
Oh, I know, the mandatory Day 38 Fire Making Challenge.
No! God, please, no!
Some people hate it and... oh, wait, no, everybody hates it. Don't get me wrong, from a gameplay mechanic, I hate this every time it appears. But that feeling is just amplified in Survivor Triple H. How the Forest Fire Making Challenge worked in Triple H was in the form of an advantage, or a twist. The winner of the Final Immunity Challenge would also be handed a piece of paper from Jeff. Chrissy would end up winning the Final Immunity Challenge and be given the infamous piece of paper. But it's not that simple, as when the challenge took place, Chrissy, Ryan, and Devin all knew what needed to happen. We'll dive into Ben's insane bombs that were hidden immunity idols a little later, but the Final 4 was literally the first chance to get Ben out since he played his idol at 3 consecutive tribal councils at the Final 7, Final 6, and Final 5. Chrissy would eventually win in a dramatic and a controversial immunity challenge in its own right, so yay, no more idols to hide behind Ben, the tribe will finally get a chance to speak. Except no, the tribe doesn't get a chance to speak here, as the mystery piece of paper that Chrissy received was a new twist added into the game. The winner of the Final Immunity Challenge gets to select one person to go to the end with them, and the other 2 remaining players have to duke it out in a forced fire-making challenge. The winner of the challenge joins the other 2 players, and the loser becomes the final member of the jury. So, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point, as almost every single Survivor content creator has shown their distaste for this mechanic. But it's even worse here than all the following seasons, as the players were unaware of the format change that was going on in this season, and it really felt like an out-of-place, last-minute thing. Ultimately, giving Ben a speed pass to the end of the game from Day 33 all the way to Day 39. The Forced Fire Making Challenge is just not as compelling to watch and completely takes away from the decision-making process. Not only that, but it indirectly forced the Survivor meta of taking out big threats to happen much sooner in later seasons. See, if a big threat has an idol, then you know they're safe at the Final 5, and after the Final 5, they at least have a chance to win the fire and make it to Day 39. So theoretically, you have to vote them out at Final 6 now instead of Final 5, where it used to be Final 4, it gets all confusing. I'm sad, I don't like it, but I'm pretty sure the fire making challenge is here to stay.
You could be a millionaire, Chrissy.
First of all, you could be a millionaire and Devin could be a millionaire.
True.
Right?
I know one thing Ben will not be.
This being the modern era of Survivor, the production team had more surprises waiting for us throughout the entire season. This is the Advantage era, of course, and Advantage Geddon had just taken place, and we're about to see the aftermath of what that all meant. The extra vote, the vote blocker, and the return of the fan favorite Super Idol. The Super Idol works the same as it did in all previous seasons, as it can be played after the votes have been read. However, unlike other previous versions of the Super Idol, this version can only be used at the first tribal council. So cool, I guess, but also, does anyone else see a problem with this? Like, if it can only be played at the first tribal council, then why have it be a super idol? It can only be played at one tribal council, so just have it be a regular idol. But no, this is Survivor in the modern era, and that just sounds way too simple. Next up, we have the vote blocker, and this was the first time this advantage was introduced into Survivor. This advantage had an expiry date on it as well, only being valid for the next tribal council. Although both of these weren't executed perfectly, I actually really like the idea of idols and advantages only being good for a certain number of days. Obviously, this helps with controlling the number of advantages that are in the game at one time, preventing Advantage Geddon from ever happening again. But the expiry date mechanic would need to be fine-tuned, as it just felt really clunky and awkward in Survivor HHH. This is highlighted with the vote blocker, as if the person that found it wasn't going to tribal council, then they would have to place the vote blocker onto someone else of the losing tribe. This just doesn't seem fair to me at all, as Jessica would ultimately place the advantage onto Devin, who I might add, Jessica had never met before. Lastly, I want to briefly touch on the extra vote advantage, which, let's all be honest with ourselves here, looking at the big picture of Survivor and all the seasons containing the extra vote, it kind of flops, and this season is no exception to that, as this advantage goes unplayed when Lauren is blindsided on day 33 when Ben plays one of his hidden immunity idols.
Ben Bomb. La la la. While you guys are sleeping, what's that saying? The early bird gets a worm?
I feel like it makes the most sense to discuss the characters of the season and the gameplay at the same time. They're really similar in the sense that this season is a slow build up and not much really happens until something actually happens. The pre-merge of the season was really slow, and I think that's highlighted when one of the main plot points throughout the entire pre-merge is the showmance that took place between Jessica and Cole. And I mean, it was a pretty important showmance when the entire plotline is halted on day 19 when Jessica is voted out, and on day 24 when Cole is voted out as well. I gotta say, the standout performance of the pre-merge is hands down the Alan Ball boot episode. This episode has a lot of things going for it. There was an unexpected tribe swap happen with 15 castaways remaining, we had the vote block disadvantage played on Devin, Joe with a pretty funny idol play, and crazy Alan Ball. Other than that though, I feel like the pre-merge of Survivor HHH is just meh. It didn't fall flat on its head, and there was some potential here, but at the same time, it lacked the meat and potatoes that I look for in a good Survivor season, and instead, we just got the GM pizza. We were seeing less things happening on our screen in terms of strategic play and big moves, and instead we're left with some decent character building moments, which yeah, come on, Survivor, give me more of the social game. I want to understand these players. Once we get to the merge of the season, things start to pick up, right? The first half of the merge honestly fell flat for me as well, and it was a snooze fest until the final 7. But trust me, at the final 7, when things finally get going, we go to 0 to 100 real quick. Before we get there, we have a little warm up of excitement. Remember that big showmance arc I talked about? Yeah, well, they both get voted out. There was actually a pretty funny idol hunt moment and a possible pagonging. Climax building up to the eventual resolution. Ben finds the idol, Ben plays the idol, Ben's safe, and Ben finds the idol, Ben plays the idol, Ben's safe, and Ben finds the idol, Ben plays the idol, Ben's safe. Now obviously this is drastic oversimplification of what unfolded, and you gotta give credit where credit's due, as Ben needed the hidden immunity idol, or his game was just done. But I think there's something to it when you're not sure if you need to play the idol, and end up making the right decision or wrong decision, versus knowing that you need to play the idol or else you're going home. Idols are fun, and I love the good old idol play as much as the next guy, but it got a little ridiculous here. The first time Ben played the idol, it was really fun. Second time was entertaining, but by the third time I was over the Ben bombs and what was turning into Survivor Ben's Island. The point I'm trying to get at here is even when Survivor Triple H is doing something good and really the highlight of the entire season, the show still somehow finds a way to not hit right. Bear with me for a second as I explain the analogy, as I'm actually really proud of this one. The Ben bomb story arc is a lot like McDonald's to me, in the sense that it was fun until it wasn't anymore. See, me and McDonald's have a weird relationship, as a lot of the time I do enjoy the food when I'm eating it, but not too long afterwards, my stomach will be yelling at me as I sit on the toilet. Enough about me and my eating problems, let's finally discuss the elephant in the room.
The finale of the season.
The final episode of the season, Survivor Triple H, the grand finale, the goodbye of the season, is actually fun to watch. You need to respect how Survivor was able to tell the story this season. The season started out really slow and kind of enticed us in and kind of showed us a sneak peek with the Joe Idol play and the Alan Ball blindside, and it kept us entertained and ready for the action. Then the rising action took place, and we were building up to the anticipation with the double boot episode taking out JP and Joe. And then the climax, the Ben bombing his way through the final portions of the game and eventually winning. Sorry, I was trying to be super insightful and trying to convince myself that the season could be at least good or watchable. It's not a good season. The issue is there are good elements to be found inside, meaning it also isn't a bad season either. It's just meh. In conclusion, I think this is a season that hasn't aged well due to the hate of the forest fire making. Overall, I believe Survivor, heroes versus healers versus hustlers, I hate saying that, is viewed best as a season purely for the big moments and bombs that were dropped. Finally, this season is a great example of the classic pizza to Survivor comparison. You all know how the old saying goes, Survivor is a lot like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's still good. Well, Survivor HHH is like the most perfect average pizza you've ever gotten from the pizza place you expect more from. Maybe it's from the production decisions, or maybe it had trouble following a season like Game Changers, or maybe there was just too many bombs being dropped. So the season could have been a lot more, but at the end of the day, it simply flopped. My final rating for Survivor, heroes versus healers, screw it. My final rating for HHH is 6.1 out of 10. C tier.